How are we with our images? Are we moving? Let's look at the rest of the images. Given at various occasions, of course. And was that our beginning?
What?
Was that our beginning? No. So, hold it a second. Could you go back one? Yeah. What is the aesthetic of this time, huh? The rose meaning love, and I Google rose, and there are about 20 different colors of rose, and each color has a different meaning. Mm-hmm. We don't think of that much now. These would make good cards now. I've done that with 2 or 3 note cards, to the extent that we write notes. I've reproduced this one and made a note card out of it on an ivory paper. Okay. Must be an old English scene. Jello? Were these used for an advertisement? Does anyone know? It looks like a Jello advertisement. I think they were used for a product, but I don't know the product. I use that as the frontispiece in the book. Frontispiece. Is it? Go back to the quilt. Oh, no. Oh, maybe not. Let's leave it right there. Back one there. Let's just hold that on like that. We use that as the frontispiece of the book. I've gathered some of my stories in a book called Tales from the Middle Border. And I have 2 essays, one from my father and one about my mother. And the one of my father is called Once My Father Traveled West to California. In 1924, he and his good friend Mervyn Kittleson, a neighboring farmer, finished the crops for the harvest the crops in September, and on September 15th, they had purchased a Model T Ford in Harvard, Illinois, and drove to California. The Lincoln Highway was just being built, so part of it was on the Lincoln Highway. And by the time they had reached Clinton, Iowa, the first day they'd had 5 flat tires. And he writes cards back to his Aunt Kate and his sister Margie. And he took photographs with his Kodak Bellows camera. And about 20 years ago, out on the front porch, I found a box of the letters and the negatives from the photographs. So I used them in telling his story. And they lived until March, when his father said it's time to come home and plant the crops. He and Mervyn worked in restaurants to begin with, and then later on the telephone building power towers for California Electric. The other story is called My Mother's Diary. And late in her life, a couple years before she passed away, we were looking in the buffet. I found a leather diary, 2 diaries. And they were diaries that she kept from the age of 9 until she was 16. All of those years, a daily entry for all of those years. She had one diary that had the 5 years, so on one page, you had 5 each year. And I asked her if I could take them home and look at them, and she said, well, no, there's nothing there. That's not very interesting. But she said someday. So, the someday came, and I took the diary home, and I quote from it in this story, My Mother's Diary, and it's, what can I say? I hope you can read it sometime. To read the writing of a 10-year-old, these days I find myself reading the letters and the many notes of things that my mother wrote to me. These letters and notes, as well as the diary that she kept faithfully as a young girl, are in a box on the top shelf of my closet. I get them down and read them whenever I want to hear about her life. The parting words of each letter remind me that my mother is with me always. As ever, Mom. Every letter signed, as ever, Mom. A number of stories told there. Well, what else can I say? I think we have time, and what is the time? Oh, yes. If you have stories to tell or comments or questions, please. There's a book, The Good Soldier by Ford Maddox Ford, that I keep rereading. When was it written? In the 1920s, English writer, Ford Maddox Ford. The first line is, "This is the saddest story I've ever heard." I've often thought about using that in one of my books.
Can you tell me a little bit more about it? It says you recently received an August Derleth Award.
Yes.
I was at a restaurant this weekend, and that man's whole life story was on the walls in that.
You were at the name of the restaurant in Sauk City.
Listrous?
Listras?
Yeah.
August Derleth, probably the most prolific ever Wisconsin writer. He died in the 1970s. He wrote 150 books and wrote poetry. And he was an inspiration to me, to a lot of people. Excuse me a second. Some of you have probably read August Derleth. My favorite August Derleth's book is Walden West. Very much admirer of Henry David Thoreau. And he has 2 books on life in Sauk City. Daily accounts, his journals, stories called Walden West and Return to Walden West. He wrote beautiful nature essays that were columns in the, some of them columns in the Madison Capital Times, and also they appear in his book. I took some of the nature essays, and I started a little publishing company about 6 years ago as part of an imprint with University of Wisconsin Press. And I wanted to introduce Derleth, particularly his nature writings, to people who had not read Derleth before. So I published a little book called In the Course of My Walks, and it's divided according to 30-some walks, 31 walks in his area along the Wisconsin River. Continuing in this line, 3 Wisconsin writers were important to me, have been important to me. This is a library story. When I was a freshman in high school, at Delavan High School, and coming in daily from the farm in the pickup truck, which we'd hide down the street so no one knew we were coming from the farm. Sad, that's a sad story, isn't it?